This is called Hunyuan GameCraft by the one and only Tencent Hunyuan, which also released one of the best video generators out there and 3D model generators. Anyways, back to Hunyuan GameCraft, this can generate interactive game videos with high-quality graphics and realistic movements. So this takes an input image to use as the first frame of the scene, plus a text prompt describing the scene. You would also feed it key presses, and the AI would animate the scene based on these controls. And then you can take the last frame of that generation and plug it back as the input and rinse and repeat, and what you get is a continuous long video. You can iterate through this as many times as you want. So here are some more examples. Here is the text prompt. On the bottom right, you can see the keys that are being pressed. And note that this AI is able to respond and change the view based on these key presses. And you know, the quality of this generation is actually pretty good compared with other alternatives I featured on my channel before. As you can see, this type of AI can potentially be used to generate video games in the future. Perhaps we no longer will have any video games with predefined worlds or designs or characters. Instead, you can just prompt an AI and it would generate everything on the fly. Now, I featured a ton of similar game generators before, such as Google's Game Engine, which can generate a real-time playable simulation of Doom, and also Microsoft's Diamond, which can generate a simulation of Counter-Strike. However, note that the quality of the generations from Hunyuan GameCraft are just a lot better. Like, this is getting close to a AAA quality video game. Now, the nice thing about GameCraft is this can also remember the scene. So even if you walk forward or somewhere else and then you go back to the original location, GameCraft is able to preserve this original scene information. Whereas for other 3D world generators, they often don't actually remember the scene. So if you walk backwards, it could generate a completely different thing compared to what was there before. And note that for here, it can also generate scenes in various styles, including realistic and pixelated, or kind of this artsy pastel style. Now, in addition to first-person scenes, where you are the viewer, GameCraft is also able to generate third-person scenes, where you are viewing the player from behind. So here are some examples of that. And this can handle all sorts of scenarios, including driving, or this like first-person shooter game, to a warrior riding a horse, or to this sailboat. Whereas several other AI game generators are only fine-tuned on a specific game, so they can only generate that game. For this one, it can generate everything under the sun. And note that it doesn't even have to be first-person or third-person. And it doesn't have to just generate video game scenes. This is essentially a video generator, so you can generate any types of videos while controlling for how you want the camera to move in the video, just by specifying the key presses. So this is a super powerful and flexible tool. Now, if you scroll up to the top of the page, for now, they've only released a technical paper. However, Hunyuan is known to open source most of their stuff, including Hunyuan, which is the video generator, and Hunyuan 3D, which is one of the best 3D model generators out there. So hopefully they are also going to release Hunyuan GameCraft soon. This tool would be a game changer for video game design and creation. Anyways, for now, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Now, this isn't the only thing that Tencent Hunyuan is working on. So not only did they release this interactive video game generator, but they've also released a new open source model called Hunyuan A13B. Now, this is a mixture of experts models, so think of this as like a team of AI agents working together to help you solve a problem. Now, this model features a total of 80 billion parameters, but only 13 billion of these are active when you use it. So this makes it super efficient while being able to perform as well as much larger models. In fact, here are some benchmark scores across a variety of different topics, including math, science, coding, reasoning, instruction following, etc., etc. And then this last column is this new Hunyuan A13B. You know, I wish they would bold the value that is the highest so that it's easier to find which model is the best performer. But anyways, from just a ballpark scan of this, you can see that Hunyuan A13B performs just as good as DeepSeek R1 or OpenAI's O1. This is super impressive considering It only has 13 billion active parameters, whereas these guys have hundreds of billions of parameters. Now, you can use this for free online right now. So simply click on this demo link to go to their Hunyuan online platform. Now, this is in Chinese, but if you're using Google Chrome, you can just right-click and click on Translate to English. Now, they have a few different settings which you might be familiar with. If you toggle this on, it will basically search the web and find you the most up-to-date information. They also have this think fast feature, which basically gets it to respond faster if your task doesn't really require deep reasoning. If you are trying to get it to solve a really complex math, science, or coding problem, then you can turn this off to get it to think for longer. And then under here, it also has this deep search capability, which is very similar to other deep search agents like OpenAI's Deep Research and Gemini Deep Research. So let's try this prompt. A 21-year-old college student comes to the clinic with short chest pain that worsens with deep breathing and improves when sitting forward. He recently had a cold, etc., etc. Vitals are stable, and the ECG shows, etc., etc. Please diagnose. Let's press generate and see what that gives us. So with most thinking models, you can see its thought process over here. So first, it's taking all the symptoms and figuring out the most probable explanation. And then it says, that makes me think of pericarditis, which has these symptoms. And then next, it looks at the ECG findings and also reinforces that it's likely pericarditis. It also thinks about other possibilities, such as STEMI or myocarditis. But that's more associated with etc., etc. So it concludes that pericarditis fits better with the given symptoms. And then the patient is young, which is also a common age for pericarditis. Anyways, afterwards, it gives us the diagnosis with some key clinical clues, and also it explains why it excluded other possibilities. And then here is the conclusion. So that's just one example of using Hunyuan A13B. Again, this is completely open source, and it's just as good as DeepSeek R1 or OpenAI's O1. On this GitHub repo, it contains all the instructions on how you can download and use this locally on your computer. Anyways, if you're interested in learning more, I'll link to this main page in the description below.